We're the last Christians left, okay? I'm on a one-man crusade to stop Christians from moving to Texas or Tennessee, okay? Because I just don't, I understand why people would want to. I mean, our state is, never mind. I understand people want to. However, I'm going, California is the most influential state in the most influential country in the world. You would think Christians are going, I only got one life to make a maximum impact. Where's the hot spot? I'm going to California. Let's go after it. I keep looking for a verse in the Bible that says, this is hard run. I can't find it.
Welcome to Shelter Cove Online. We are so glad that you're joining us today for this sermon. We hope and pray that this message encourages you, that you learn something, that you enjoy it. But more than that, we just pray that God would move in your life, that He would reveal some more of Himself to you today. If you would like to respond to this message in any way, you can contact us at sheltercovelive.com. Have an amazing rest of your day.
We have somebody very special with us today. You are in for an absolute treat. I am so excited about this. We are honored today to be joined by the founding senior pastor at Bayside Church up in Sacramento. He is an author. He is a visionary. He's an incredible leader. He has a heart for churches and for raising up leaders in churches. We are so excited he's here. So please, please, please give a huge Shelter Cove welcome to Pastor Ray Johnston.
Thanks, bro. All right. Hey, first thing I want to say is y'all look good, okay? And the other thing I want to talk to you, first of all, if you are a husband here, would you raise your hand? Okay, good. Keep it up if you married way out of your league. Okay, good. If your hand didn't stay up, you're an idiot. That was a test. Hopefully that was the first person you said you look good to. Hey, first of all, I'm really glad to be here. I love 10 a.m. services because people are actually awake, okay? How many of you have already had coffee? Good, you're gonna need it. I'm gonna bore you to death. I'm gonna come out swinging, is that okay? Okay, there are message notes. I'll get back to that in a second. I'm gonna cover Mark chapter 2, but I wanna tell you what this whole thing is about, okay? My wife Carol and I, we were both raised in non-Christian homes. I was an atheist growing up. Okay, I talked a guy out of becoming a Christian when I was 18 years old. My dad was president of a company in Southern California. He was a big deal. Guys wanted to run him for governor of California. He turned them down. They ran a guy named Ronald Reagan instead. And so that's kind of my family background. My dad was an atheist, so was I. When I was 18, I talked a guy out of becoming a Christian, which does not look good on the pastor's resume. So I'm actually glad to be here this morning. And so we ended up, my wife and I end up meeting Jesus Christ. We get married. We've been married in September. We've been married for 40 years, okay? Which is the longest running marriage in the history of my family tree, okay? And so I just love it when people go, oh, I just don't think Jesus and the Bible make that big of a difference. All I have to do is take out my family tree. We're the only non-divorced marriage in 140 years. Okay, so Jesus, the Bible, and a great church make all the difference in the world. Okay, and so my wife and I get married, and we have two boys, and we're living in Chicago. I'm a professor at 2 graduate schools and a university, and then she contracts pregnancy a third time. Surprise! So I go to teach. I come home. She's gone to find out if it were a boy or because we're hoping for one or the other, And I meet her at the front door. And I go, well, and she goes, we better go in the back bedroom. I'm thinking, that's how we got here in the first place, but okay with me. So we go in the back bedroom. She goes, you better sit down. I sit on the bed, and she picks out a package, and she hands it to me. I open it up. It's double mint chewing gum. You're groaning, and dude, you're in the front row. And that's what I did. I went, she went, and I keeled over on the bed, okay? And we have identical twin daughters, okay? However, that gave us 4 kids under 4. I need to sit down. No, And so we start raising this. It was like having multiple bowling lanes installed in your mind, okay? Matter of fact, how many of you have kids? How many parents have kids, okay? How many of you have young kids? That's why you're here, free childcare. How many of you have had teenage kids? Be a prayer meeting after the service. How many of you have kids in college? Anybody got kids in college? Yeah, with the ushers, please come forward. How many of you raised kids and they're gone? Cheering's breaking out. How many of you raised kids, they're gone, but now they're back? Okay, so we have these young kids and we're exhausted all the time, and every time you put these kids to bed, they don't stay there. You know what I'm talking about? Our oldest son, Mark, I put him to bed, he would never stay there. Finally, I said, look, I'm gonna close the door, do not get out of bed, do not leave the room, okay? And I hear this voice about 5 minutes later, Dad, I go, yeah. He goes, Dad, can I have water? No, you already had water. He goes, can I get up? No. About a minute later, he goes, Dad, Jesus wants me to get up. So we're all exhausted. So we gotta do something that gets our kids exhausted so they stay in bed. So we finally buy it, a 15-foot Jump King trampoline. Anybody have one of those things for your kids growing up? Yeah, it's a great way to kill a couple of them. Saves on college expense. No, I'm kidding. We set this up in the backyard, and our whole family of 6, we're out there jumping. We have a blast first day, and then everybody goes in the house except for myself and our middle son, Scott, who at that point is about this wide and about that high. And he's like 8, so we start jumping up and down on this trampoline. And then the more we jump, the more we figured out if he timed his jump, some of you know this, he times his jump to my jump, he could get what? Much higher. How many of you have done this? So, and we start doing this, and we actually get pretty good at it. And one moment in time, I don't know whether it was my weight and his weight, I don't know whether it was barometric pressure, a synapse in the space-time continuum, an eclipse, whatever it was, but I go up, crash down, he comes at the exact time, and zap, he goes flying. I hit so hard I fell down on the trampoline. I look up, and Scott is way, way, way up, and he looks like you dropped a scared cat off a 40-story building. And he's clawing the air, and he comes crashing down, partly on me and partly on the trampoline, and then we start laughing hysterically, and I grab him a big old hug, we're laying there, and we're both thinking the same thing. Thank God Mom wasn't here to see this. How many of you guys know what I'm talking about? And as I'm holding him, we hear this. How many of you guys know that sound? And we look over, and Mom had just walked back out in the backyard at that moment. And then she gave us that mom look. You guys know that look? And then she said, we should do this much, women, safer, which we did until she went back in the house. And folks, I learned a very important lesson that day, and it is, in my opinion, I'm gonna come out swinging, because our country is not getting this right. Our state, which has lost its ever-loving mind, is not getting this right. Both political parties will never get this right. Christians are now not getting this right. And here's what I learned that day. With my son skyrocketing, here's what I learned. Nobody, including you, nobody gets as high as they can get in life without somebody else lifting them up. Nobody can get as high as they can get in life without somebody else lifting them up. And we have developed in the last 4 years a culture that does not lift people up anymore, does it? It is, you go online, everybody's getting shredded, everything's hate speech, and that's infected the Christian church, okay? Jesus said, hey, here's the big deal. Love God and love each other. Okay? And so I'm going to come out swinging, because I actually believe this. If you will shift gears and become a person that lifts people up, God will use you to change lives, and maybe change California, and maybe change the country, and maybe change the world. Everybody got that? Okay, and so I'm going to introduce you to a passage in the Bible, and here's what I believe, okay? This is a Bible, okay? The way God worked then is the way God works Now, the way God worked then is the way God works now. I'm going to give you something. It is so powerful. There are 5 things that these 4 guys do in this passage, and check this out. They trigger a miracle in the life of somebody they care about. Got any kids, got any friends, or yourself? Would you like to trigger? Now, who does the miracle? God. Who gets the glory? Okay, this is not a trick question, people. This is church, okay? All ready? Who gets the glory? God. Who triggers the miracle? God. However, these 4 guys, they did 5 things and triggered a miracle. Now, I'm going to read this passage. If this gets too exciting, just grab the person next to you. Mark chapter 2. Jesus shows up at home, and it says he again entered Capernaum, and people heard he had come home, okay? So, and then it says this, he preached the word of God to them. Then it says this, it's packed. So many people gathered there, there was no room left, not even outside the door. I love packed services, okay, just like this one. It is wall to wall. God is, by the way, your church is one of the few I spend a lot of time at pastors' conferences now and speaking to all these pastors. Your church is one of the few churches in the country that is above pre-COVID numbers. God is up to something very special here, and it is very rare these days, okay? And I also think your pastor is world class. He means what he says, what he preaches, and he lives what he says when he's not preaching, okay? So I hope you know how good you have it, okay? That's what he wrote for me to say. Now, I gotta keep on. Now, what's interesting is this. So Jesus, in a packed house, preaching the Bible, and all of a sudden it says this, some men came bringing to him a paralyzed person and carried by 4 of them. And so it says this, since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus. Now, I write a bunch of books. Okay, I'll tell you some later. I'm writing these books, and I did a little research project, and this passage happened at a church in Florida to teach it. There was a youth pastor in Florida, okay? And this youth pastor was like, I got to teach my kids Mark chapter 2, junior high class, big old class, about 40 kids. So he gets his kids on a Sunday school class in a wing of a building that's going to be demolished, okay? So they're in this classroom, and all of a sudden, this youth pastor is reading Mark chapter 2. Jesus was at home, and 4 men came bringing to him paralytic. And just then, these 4 huge dudes walk up to the room, and they can't get in. They got a stretcher with a buddy there. It's actually happened in Florida, okay? And it says this, so after not being able to get him on the roof, they went up on the roof and dug through it. And they hear these guys set ladders up, and these guys, right as the youth pastor is ignoring the entire thing. He's just reading Mark chapter 2 in a boring, monotone voice, okay? And he says, and they went up on the roof, and they, all of a sudden, these kids, these junior high kids sitting in these classrooms, hear the steps on the roof. And it says, then they dug a hole, Jesus, and they dug a hole in the roof, and they hear this chainsaw start. And all of a sudden, and the youth pastor ignores the whole thing and just keeps reading Mark chapter 2 in a boring voice. And they're a chainsaw start. And then all of a sudden he goes, and he says, after digging a hole in the roof, they hear this chainsaw go right through the roof. You know those white tiles on the classroom type roofs? They start falling down on these kids. And these junior high kids are terrified. So the youth pastor ignores the whole thing, and they all scatter to the wall. So the chairs are empty, and these kids are plastered against the walls, and now they're kind of looking around. They're not bored, and he just keeps reading the word. And he says this, he says, and they dug a hole in the roof, and they lowered the paralyzed man in front of Jesus. And these 4 carpenters cut a hole in the roof, the thing crashes in, and they lower, literally, true story, they lower a guy in front of the youth pastor. And the youth pastor looks, says the words of Jesus, my son, your sins are forgiven. And then he says, and then the Pharisees in the passage kind of complain, and because they didn't want Jesus claiming to be God. And then he says, and he just keeps reading Mark chapter 2, and he looks at this guy and says, but that you may know that I have authority on earth to forgive sins. He says, rise, take up your pallet and walk. And in front of all these scared, shocked, dusty junior high kids, this guy leaps off, runs around, high fives all the junior high kids, runs out of the room. The 4 carpenter guys are on the roof cheering, running their chainsaw, blowing horns. That happened right in the Bible and at a church in Florida. By the way, is that great youth ministry, by the way? You bet it is. That's a youth pastor. He's looking for a job right now for some reason. And here's what I want to say. That's exactly what happened. And Mark chapter 2 ends with this phrase. This amazed everyone. And they all praised God, saying, we've never seen anything like this. I believe God puts you on this planet so you could live in such a way as amazing things happen in your future, and it amazes you going, God's never worked through me like this. Now, I've never seen stuff like this happen. Those days could be ahead, because here's what I believe. They took 5 steps, and as I said a minute ago, the way God worked then is the way God works now. And so just so you'll remember these, I actually put these in a bookmark so you have these for the rest of your life. They're in the chair thing and right in front of you. You should be able to pull these out, or if you're in the front row, reach over and steal one. And what happens is I put the 5 steps these 4 guys took. Now, how powerful is this? I did this message at Bayside 15 years ago. We had a woman in our church, great family, and her son had gone away for his first year at college, went down to San Diego State University. He came home at Christmas and announced, I am not going to church with you guys. I am no longer a Christian. I have thrown away the faith. I don't believe it anymore, and I'm out. And it broke his parents' heart, and instead of like climbing all over this kid, that week she was in church. She got this. She took it home. She put it in her closet where he would never see it. She prayed, memorized these things, read the verses every day, and she took these 5 steps with her son on a regular basis. And 8 months later, her son came back to Jesus Christ, recommitted his life to Christ, ended up marrying a Christian, and is raising his kids to love God in a great Christian church. Okay? There is no limit to what God will work for you. The same, and the way these guys took 5 steps, and I actually believe this. They took 5 steps and triggered a miracle. God does the miracle, but we trigger it. Now, what are those 5 steps? Y'all ready? Okay, I'm gonna ask that again. Y'all ready? Good, here we go. I put the word raise, R-A-I-S-E, because that way they kept raising this guy up. Number 1 is this: raise your expectations. Raise your expectations. It says this, and this is a great verse, staggering verse. When Jesus saw their what? Faith. Circle the word faith. When Jesus saw their faith, it was their faith that triggered a miracle. It was their trait that God had all the power. It was their faith that we could just get this guy in a room where he would hear God's word, experience his forgiveness, and leave never the same. It was their faith that triggered a miracle. It was their faith that raised their expectation. It was their faith that raised their hope level. It was their faith that literally triggered some actions. I actually believe this: you will never raise people up. You will never raise your family up. You will never raise your business up. You will never raise yourself up. You will never raise your emotions back up until your faith raises your expectations for the future. When your faith raises your expectations of the future, then you've got something. The point is this: Jesus believed impossible things were possible no matter what things are like right now. I'm actually pretty fired up about what could happen in the state of California. Raise your hand if you are still living in California. Great, we're the last Christians left, okay? I'm on a one-man crusade to stop Christians from moving to Texas or Tennessee, okay? Because I just don't, I understand why people would want to. I mean, our state is, never mind. I understand people want to. However, I'm going, California is the most influential state in the most influential country in the world. You would think Christians are going, I only got one life to make a maximum impact. Where's the hot spot? I'm going to California. Let's go after it. I keep looking for a verse in the Bible that says, this is hard run. I can't find it. Okay? And so we're matter of fact, at a Bayside, we just set a goal to plant 100 new churches in the next 10 years. 60 of them in the state of California, and we're going to recruit people from Texas and Tennessee to move here to help launch these churches. Got it. Now, number 1 is this: raise your expectations. When Jesus saw their faith. Now, this is a big deal, okay? Because when my faith rises, my encouragement and expectation level rise, and when my faith goes down, my hope level goes down, and when your hope level goes down, you have no future. Everybody got that? That's a really big deal. When your hope level drops, and when discouragement rises, your hope level drops. And nobody acting on discouragement ever did anything great. And so this is kind of embarrassing to tell you all. When 3 years and about 3 months ago, COVID shut the world down on a Sunday afternoon. Does anybody remember that? Sunday afternoon, Coachella pulled the plug, the tennis tournament pulled the plug, Major League Sports pulled the plug, churches pulled, the whole world shut down. It was a Sunday afternoon. And the problem was this, we do conferences at Bayside. I think there's one in the back. We do a conference called Thrive. And it's a conference for everybody. And it's pastors, business leaders, moms, dads, teenagers come flocking to this thing. It's this incredible conference up there. And the one we do up in Northern California, we cut it off at 4,000 people. Okay? And people come from every state, all around the world. California tends to be the heaviest. It's incredible what goes on. We have bands, worship bands, incredible communicators, 70 seminars. We screw around a lot. And then when it sold out, we went, let's do one in Southern California. So we did one in Palm Springs in February, because that was God's will. And we capped that at 2,000. And on the same day, I had to send a thing out. I got a hold of my staff and said, we're pulling the plug on both conferences, which were 8 weeks away. And I was brokenhearted, and I got discouraged, and I stayed discouraged. And I usually bounce back pretty fast. I didn't bounce back, and I was just so bummed about this. And finally I went, I do not want to let discouragement run my life. And so I took my Bible, I was in Southern California, went into a backyard, and I just took some paper to write down, and I just went, okay, God, let's go at this. And I started reading the Bible. And God, crystal clear, told me something that changed my life. And if you get this, it'll change your life and probably everything else. I was so discouraged about these conferences. I went, God said, if you will let go of discouragement and replace it with dreaming, the world just might be a better place. If you will let go of discouragement and replace it with dreaming, the world just might be a better place. I'm gonna say that one more time, because this is huge. You can do this to anything. If you will just let go of discouragement and replace it with dreaming, your future can be different. You can point that at anything. You could say, let go of discouragement about your marriage. It might be go to a better place. Let go of discouragement about yourself or your weight or your future or your finances or something that's never worked or your kids or your company or whatever. If you will let go of discouragement and replace it with dreaming. So I went, okay, God, let's test it. So I went, what am I most discouraged about? 2 canceled great conferences. And I went, and basically I went, okay, we got a big God, let's dream. And this took about 1 minute. It was like taking dictation from God. I actually wrote this down. What if, I went, let's dream. What if, instead of our conferences, we launched the largest ever completely online, totally free, global Christian leadership conference that's ever existed in history? What if we invited every great communicator to speak and we didn't pay anybody anything because they're all home doing nothing? And then what if we raised $1 million for kids who are going to be negatively affected by COVID? And what if we did it all 8 weeks from now? That's what I wrote. And so I called our staff together. I told them what happened to me. And I said, I'm trying to let go of discouragement. And I have a dream. And here it is. And they all bought into it. And so we went after this thing. We built a studio at Bayside. We put a bunch of stuff online. We taped every single person we have to speak for free. From everybody. T.D. Jakes, John Maxwell, heads of companies. They all agreed to speak at this leadership thing for free. We ran it for 3 straight days online. And here's the problem is this. When you're in person, like this service is packed. Okay? I know you're here. If you're staring at a camera, you're like, is my mom the only person listening? Is there anybody there? So we have this huge ESPN-like studio that we built, and so we've got multiple studios and little things and so we're bouncing from thing to thing, and I'm at the main desk, and so we start this thing, and I have no clue if anybody's listening. Because I'm praying if you will let go of discouragement and replace it with dreaming. And I went, I hope this is above 6,000, because then it's above what our conferences are. But there might only be 6 people, okay? There's a lot of work for 6 people. So at the first break, I'm at the desk and I said to the producer, I said, can you get me a list of how many people are listening? Is there anybody listening? And where they're from, okay? And we go back, we roll another seminar thing, and they slide a piece of paper to me, and I almost started crying at the desk. I looked down, because I'm thinking, are there 6 people, whatever? And I looked down and said, there are currently 434,000 distinct individual devices tuned into the conference right now. Not only that, it is every state in the country, and it is 43 different countries, and some of the countries are places where the good news of Jesus Christ can't go, and there are people watching in Afghanistan and Pakistan and Russia and all these different places. And they all put a note in there, by the way, this is cool. They said the first question that came in on the online stream was in Swahili, and 2 people watching it answered in Swahili. If you will let go of discouragement and don't get stuck there and replace it with dreaming, the world just might be a better place. Number 1, every great thing in your future, God working in you, for you, and through you, starts when your faith raises your expectation, then you're back to God's zone, anything's possible. Got that? Number 1, raise your expectation. That's where they start, the word R. The second one is this. A is anticipate obstacles, because nothing is ever easy, is it? It says this, since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd. Here's the deal. They're like, let's get this guy in front of Jesus. They walk over. There's a crowd. Most Christians these days would go, that's what's wrong with the child. They start complaining, and then they would just walk away. These guys don't let their first failure stop them. They go up on the roof, cut a hole in the roof, and drop this guy in front of Jesus. Okay? In other words, they anticipate obstacles. You're going to run into obstacles, and nothing's going to be easy. However, don't let it stop you. For example, I pastor a church called Bayside. We have a whole bunch of churches in Northern California, Bay Area, and Southern California. And we started it. Oh, man. We started it about 27 years ago. There were 2 copycat suicides of teenagers in Granite Bay, and 4 people began to pray that God would raise up a church that would attract teenagers, okay? And so we start this church, and it explodes. We're at elementary school, 3 services, that packed out. We went to the high school, blew up to about 4,000 people at this high school, and then we buy land in Granite Bay on a major 4-lane road with an office complex next door. I mean, it's not like a rural thing, and we go to get a permit to build a church. And there was this little group of Granite Bay people. By the way, every community has a group of people that are against everything. True? We call them Cave people, citizens against virtually everything. And they show up and they sue us. Matter of fact, I come into services one morning at Granite Bay. They are picketing, about 12 of them are picketing our church. They're anti-Bayside signs, all of this stuff. Get out of our town. You just don't build here. And now, what are you supposed to do with your enemies? Yeah, shoot them. No, love them, okay? And so it was a cold morning. We sent them hot coffee and donuts all morning long. Okay? It started raining. We brought them umbrellas. It started raining higher. It was miserable. We said, hey, look, the anti-Bayside literature you're passing out, we would be happy to pass it out for you. Okay? We'll put them in the bulletins. Everybody will get them. Would you like us to correct the spelling? And then one woman looked at me and said, it'll be a cold day in hell before you get that church built. Well, it must be a cold day in hell because it opened 12 years ago and thousands of people met Christ in a building she said would never happen, okay? But it wasn't easy. Number 1, the R stands for raise your expectations. The A stands for anticipate obstacles. Number 3 is this, increase contact. Increase contact. The closer you are to a person, the greater your potential for impact. The closer you are to your kids, the greater your potential for impact. When my twin daughters were born, I went, dads and daughters are a big deal. I went on a daddy-daughter date nights with them all the time. Matter of fact, when I would get home at night, when our kids were little, the minute a dad gets home, what happens? Dad's home, they run and attack you, okay? When they got to be teenagers, did that happen? No. So ever since they turned teenagers, I'm reversing the favor. The minute they walk in, I get up and go to them. I'm returning the favor, okay? My daughters and I, daddy-daughter date nights all the time, okay? Matter of fact, remember the movie Ice Age when it came out? Okay, well, it was a school night, but I didn't care, so I took my daughters to see Ice Age on a daddy-daughter date night, and we went to Taco Bell, bought a whole bunch of food, and snuck it into the theater. This is God's will because it's good stewardship. How many of you have ever done this, by the way? Okay, good. And we're sitting in the back row, we're eating dinner with my daughters, watching Ice Age, and the whole last part of the movie, I put my arms around my daughters and just watched the rest of this movie, and honest to God, I'm sitting there going, there is no place I would rather be. And when they were in high school, we kept doing it, and when they went to college, I would fly in for daddy-daughter weekends occasionally, and we would just go hang out, because the closer you are to anyone, the greater potential for impact. And these guys got up close and personal with the guy that needed help, carried him to Jesus. In other words, you raise your expectations, anticipate obstacles, but then you increase contact. And then the fourth one is this. And when it doesn't happen right away, you just stay at it. You stay at it. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of Christ, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus, and after digging through it, just hard work, they just kept staying at it. They lowered the mat the paralyzed guy was lying on. In other words, this is an unbeatable combination. When you raise your expectations, by the way, why is faith a big deal? Okay? Faith is a big deal because your faith triggers everything. The second some of you are going to walk out of here and you're never going to be the same. Why? Okay? Because when you strengthen your faith, you strengthen your future. When you strengthen your faith, you strengthen your life. When you strengthen your faith, you strengthen your family. When you strengthen your faith, you strengthen your emotions. Make sense? There's the starting point of anything ever getting better is I strengthen my faith. I just did a training thing with 12 CEOs of corporations, okay? And a totally secular thing. I spent all day with these CEOs of corporations. The first thing I did was I got up and it said, if you want to have a great future, if you want your company to have a great future, here's the key, and if you get this wrong, nothing's going to happen. And here's what I said to them. Y'all ready? Some of you might want to write this down. Nothing great happens through you until it first happens in you. Nothing great happens through you until it first happens in you, which means the key to your future is I get great things happening in me, and then I'm a different person, and now it happens through me. Make sense? Okay, that's why I'm glad you're here this morning, okay? Most of us are way better, the next week's way better after giving God an hour, okay? And so raise your expectations, anticipate obstacles, increase contact, and then you stay at it and don't quit. And then the last one is this, you expect great things from God. I love it. This amazed everyone, and they praised God saying, we have never seen anything like it. Now, I couldn't wait to get to this part of this message because there's been something that's bothering me, so I thought I would let it bother you all. Because I think there is a new idol in this country, and now all the other old idols are around, but there's a new idol in this country, and it's affecting Christians and church people most, and our government fueled it as much as they could. And you know what the new idol is? It's the idol of safety. It's if we can just make everybody scared enough, they won't actually do anything. Would you all agree? I mean, it's the idol of safety. And the idol of safety is wrecking Christians' lives, their impact, and their churches. Matter of fact, and by the way, and you know who it's really hurting? The generation of kids we're raising right now. We got kids who are 10 years old before they ever get to go outside. Okay? So I made a list. Would you all agree with this? We are the most seat-belted, bike-helmeted, airbagged, hand sanitized, knee pad wearing, gated community, peanut avoiding, car locking, gluten-freed, hyper-insured, sunscreen slathering, massively medicated, password protected, inoculated, vaccinated generation in history. And all it's done is make everybody more afraid of everything. Now, I'm not saying go out and do stupid risks for the sake of doing stupid risks, okay? I am saying this. The idol of safety is wrecking our lives. Matter of fact, and the problem is this, living a safe life is an illusion. You can play it safe. You can never serve, never give, you can lock your car in the parking lot. Matter of fact, how many of you locked your car in the parking lot? Look around, that's probably a good move. You can lock your home when you leave. You can live in a gated community. You can stay in your living room and never go to church again, which some of you are. You can go, I'm just gonna hibernate and live a little fear-based life here and never do anything. And you can still die in a stupid freak accident. Would you agree? So I Googled stupid freak accident. I am not making this up. These are true stories, okay? In London, at the turn of the century, a giant vat of beer exploded and a 25-foot wall of beer spilled into the street and 8 people drowned in beer. Anybody going, well, if I gotta go, that's my way. Usually the back row. In 1910, in Boston, Massachusetts, a giant vat of molasses exploded and molasses oozed out into the street, killing 21 people. Apparently, 21 very slow people. You can just hear molasses. Walk for your lives. And so the idol of safety, I made a list, and here it is, okay? Most Christians never give. You know, most Christians now, they don't tithe, they tip. Most Christians never give. Why? It might not be safe. Most Christians never serve. Why? It might not be safe. Most Christians never share their faith, never take a stand, never make an impact. Why? It might not be safe. And you know what the problem with that is? Okay? Here's how life ends up. When I play it safe, playing it safe shrinks our lives, shrinks our faith, shrinks our impact, shrinks God, and shrinks the promises of God, and leaves you and I with shrunken up, shriveled, bitter, terrified little hearts. And then what happens? And then you live your whole life a little pile of fear, and then you die. And God gave you this one great life to live, to make a maximum impact in your generation, in this state, in this town. And we didn't do any of it, and we'll spend all of eternity wondering why a big God gave me one big life to live one major life and to make a big impact, and I didn't do it because I literally covered and cowered with fear. Now, here's the problem. I wrote a book called Jesus Called, He Wants His Church Back. And it was designed to challenge Christians. Matter of fact, it's this one. And in this book, on a Friday, I wrote this exact thing in a chapter. And I went, now it's Friday, and I titled the whole chapter, the theme of the chapter was Stop Playing It Safe. I titled the chapter, if you want to walk on water, you got to get off your couch. And what happened is, I finished that on Friday, and I almost fired up. Don't play it safe. Now, that's Friday. It's Monday morning. 4 days later, my phone rings. And it's a friend of mine in Cambodia. And the ministry this guy runs in Cambodia is amazing. And this guy moved to Cambodia, 2 towns, 100% of the girls were sex trafficked in that town, sold into sexual slavery. Some of these girls tragically, horrifically sold out 7 times a night to these idiot pedophiles, and some as young as 4 years old. Crazy. And this guy moved there, and heroically, he and his wife in this ministry have rescued about half the girls in each one of those towns, led most of them to Christ, got them in safe homes, and he calls me and he goes, because we back this guy, he calls me and he goes, man, I need some help. I go, what's up? He goes, the general over all sex trafficking called me and said, I need to see you in my office. I thought I'm getting thrown out of the country or arrested. The general looked at me and said, hey, chill, dude. He goes, we have an opportunity. He goes, the cops here are so corrupt that it just doesn't, like, the general looked at him and said, we haven't rescued a girl in 10 years. The cops are too corrupt. The pimps are all gone. The girls are all gone because they've been warned. They're paid off. He goes, but you're rescuing girls. So here's what I want to do. I want to form a SWAT team of some Cambodians I trust and some Westerners you trust. And we'll form a SWAT team and try to do some real raids and just rescue some girls and put some bad guys away. He goes, are you up for it? My buddy goes, yeah, what do you need? He goes, here's the problem, this Cambodia, we don't have any money for this stuff. He goes, it's gonna cost $250,000 to put the whole team together, equipment, salaries, all this kind of stuff. And he looks at my friend and says, do you know anywhere you can get $250,000 fast? This guy goes, yeah, there's this guy named Ray Johnson at Bayside, let me call him. So I'm on the phone, this guy's going, can you get me $250,000 fast? And now I've just written this incredible chapter, Stop Playing It Safe. But it's 4 days later. And I actually say this, I am so sorry, man. I just talked about money for 6 straight weeks in our church. And I'm afraid if I talk about money one more time, they're gonna throw me out of here. And I actually said this. It just doesn't feel safe right now to talk about money right now in my church. He goes, that's okay, God will provide, you guys have been amazing. He hangs up, I hang up. Raise your hand if you've ever had God on your back. Man, the next 48 hours, I'm miserable. So I pull our pastors together, I tell them the whole story, and our pastor's like, that's awesome. What kind of cold-hearted jerk could say no to that? So I call them back and I go, look, we're in, we'll raise it. I need a full business plan. The reason I say that is, it's gonna take him 4 to 6 weeks to create a business plan and then get it to me. So that'll buy me 4 weeks and that's gonna feel much, much safer. He calls me 2 hours later and goes, all right, the whole business plan, I already done it, it's in your inbox. I read this thing, well, Christmas Eve was right then, so I went, let's raise it on Christmas Eve. So our Christmas Eve service, I walk in and I go, Merry Christmas. We take a second offering and I said, we're not keeping a dime of it. We need $250,000. We're forming a SWAT team out there because the whole thing was like, we need bullets, we need, for Jesus, we need ammunition, we need surveillance vans, all this stuff, and $250,000. And so I said, we need to buy all this stuff. We need $250,000. I'm here to tell you, our people did not give $250,000 on Christmas Eve. They did give over $400,000 on Christmas Eve, which we didn't keep a dime of. It all went there. That was about 9 years ago. A full-on SWAT team is still operationally, and as of this morning, there are over 1,700 girls who've been rescued and living safe lives, not having to, and the best part is this, there are over 100 really bad guys arrested, tried, and in prison where they can never again hurt young girls. And by the way, church, isn't that awesome? Here's the promise. The whole thing almost didn't happen for one reason. No, one reason. Me. Almost stopped the whole thing. You and I have the power to stop God from doing some amazing things if we live in fear. You and I also are on this planet to be used by God to trigger miracles in the lives of everybody we care about. I want to read 2 verses to close this. Jesus said this, whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. This verse I made up. It's the Modesto verse. Go into all the world and have really successful careers and drive nice cars and build big houses and lead safe, respectable lives. First Hallucinations 3:16. We got to pick a lifestyle. By the way, being here is an honor. I know this is like taking a drink from a fire hose. I hope this triggers some things in your future that have a long-lasting, God-honoring path. It's a privilege to be here. Thanks so much for having me. God bless everybody.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Ray. Pastor Ray is going to be outside in just a few moments in the lobby. He's going to sign some books for us, right?
Yeah. This is the last one of these books Jesus called He Wants His Church Back, and you get one for sitting in the front row, okay? This is a book called This Changes Everything. This has sold more than anything I've ever written. I wrote a book, it's 30 straight chapters on if you become a Christian, here's why your life gets way better. We have people that keep this in their trunk and give it on all sales calls. We give it to everybody in our church that becomes a Christian. And every chapter is about 4 pages long. Chapter 31 is the evidence for the resurrection that caused me to leave atheism and become a Christ follower. Okay, that's out there, and you get a free one for me, all right? Good catch, okay? And this took 7 years to write. It's a book on hope. It's called HQ. It hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list the week it came out because business people are reading it. This, if you've never read this, I would get it and devour it and read it over and over. In this book, we took 7 years of research. We discovered there are 7 things that if you build them into your life and your kids and your company and your future, they will have sustainable hope and a future. And if you don't build these things in, you have no great future, okay? Who needs hope? Anybody here? All right, here you go, dude. Good catch. And by the way, I'll sign these for you, or if you're buying from other people in the lobby, the value goes down, but if it mean anything, I'll be out there. God bless, thanks.
Make sure, one more time for Pastor Ray, everybody. Make sure you hit church merch. That's where those books will be available. We're actually going to do our own special offering here just to cover the insurance it'll take to keep throwing books at people. So yeah, stick around for that. Pastor Ray's going to be out in the lobby. Make sure you go say hi to him. Next weekend is Independence Weekend. Hamburgers, hot dogs. We have all that stuff here. It is a great weekend to bring the person in your life that does not yet know Jesus. And so don't be safe. Bring them to church with you next week. We love you. We appreciate you. We will see you next time.